Tulsa? Yes, Tulsa. You've seen the Route 66 signs, maybe a photo of some Art Deco building you assumed was in Chicago, and mentally filed it under Flyover Skip. Here's what you didn't see. Tulsa ran a program called Tulsa Remote that literally paid remote workers $10,000 to relocate there. In human terms, that means a city intentionally imported a creative, entrepreneurial class and dropped them into a walkable Art Deco downtown that was already there waiting. The Gathering Place Park, which most people outside Oklahoma have never heard of, is genuinely one of the best urban parks in the entire country. Not good for Oklahoma, actually good. Hotel rates run roughly 40 to 60% below comparable stays in Nashville. The twist is almost embarrassing. Tulsa is cheap specifically because it's not famous yet, and that window is closing. Book it before someone makes a Netflix show about it. Pensacola. Speaking of states you'd never voluntarily fly to, next one has better beaches than half of Florida, which is a sentence that should not be possible. But here we are. Pensacola. Everyone who goes to Florida goes to Miami or Orlando, and Pensacola gets mentally categorized as, oh, that Navy base. You saw the white sand photos and assumed it was filtered or a different country. It wasn't. The reason those beaches look the way they do is that the Gulf Islands National Seashore along that coast is federally protected. It legally cannot be developed. So while Miami's beachfront is a rotating construction project with a cocktail menu that wants your mortgage, Pensacola's coastline stays intact by force of law. The water clarity genuinely rivals Caribbean destinations. The Old Town Historic District is walkable, spring and fall. The crowds basically don't exist. And here's the twist nobody leads with. The military town reputation, which is what keeps people away, is exactly why it's affordable and why the crime rates are low. The thing you thought was the problem is actually the feature. Bellingham. Now, Pacific Northwest logic, because there's a city up there that technically gets more sun than Seattle, and that city is Bellingham, Washington, a dot on the map between Seattle and Vancouver that most people drive through without stopping. What you missed. Bellingham sits in a rain shadow from the Olympic Peninsula, which means measurably fewer overcast days than Seattle. It also has ferry access to the San Juan Islands, which makes it less of a city and more of an adventure base with a downtown attached. You're 90 minutes from Vancouver, 90 minutes from Seattle. You have an extensive trail network in Whatcom County, a real brewery and food scene that's small but not fake, and prices that are significantly lower than either major city flanking it. In human terms, it functions as a gateway to two countries and a national park, and it's priced like a suburb. That's the whole trick. Columbus. Next one is where the food policy thing pays off, because I promised you that. Columbus, Ohio. You've heard Columbus is surprisingly cool, and you dismissed it because everyone says that about every Midwestern city, and it's usually a lie. Here's why Columbus is different. Starting in the 1990s, Columbus received one of the largest Somali refugee resettlements in the United States. That community built an actual little Somalia corridor. Restaurants, markets, bakeries, not a tourism district, just a neighborhood that exists for the people who live there. Add Bhutanese, Vietnamese, and other communities, and you have a genuinely diverse food scene that's structural, not performative. The Short North Arts District independently rivals anything in the country. Ohio State keeps the city young and the bar scene continuously alive. Hotels and Airbnbs tend to run well below what you'd pay in Chicago or Pittsburgh for the same quality. The twist: the diversity isn't a marketing pitch. It wasn't manufactured for visitors. It's real. It's been there for 30 years, and that's what makes it different from every city that claims to have a food scene. New Mexico. Now, one that's technically been on lists, but hear me out. Santa Fe, New Mexico. You know it exists. You've seen the Adobe photos, but you wrote it off as touristy or been done. Here's what you didn't understand. The reason every building in Santa Fe looks the way it does is that city zoning legally requires all new construction to follow Pueblo-style architecture. It's not a vibe. It's code. You can't build a glass tower there. You can't put up a chain hotel that looks like every other chain hotel. The visual coherence of that city is legally enforced, which means it's not going away. The altitude, roughly 7,000 feet, will hit you if you're not expecting it. So now you're expecting it. Canyon Road's Gallery Walk is free and legitimately world-class. The green chili food culture is regional and specific in a way you can't replicate anywhere else. And the twist? It's on lists, but still dramatically less crowded than Sedona or Taos in shoulder season, because people assume famous means crowded and just skip it. It doesn't. Savannah, next city, is basically a European city that got annexed by accident. Savannah, Georgia. It looks like a movie set. Too symmetrical, too green, too pretty, and most people assume it's a tourist trap with nothing underneath. What you didn't notice, Savannah's layout of 22 public squares was a deliberate urban design plan from 1733, and it's still intact. In human terms, that means a city core that is walkable by design, not by renovation, not by a recent bike lane project, not by gentrification, by original intent 3 centuries ago. Downtown Savannah has open container laws, which in the U.S. context is genuinely unusual and makes the whole place feel looser. SCAD, the Savannah College of Art and Design, keeps the city culturally active year-round, not just in peak season. Your River Street is the tourist trap. Skip it or spend 20 minutes there, max, but 2 blocks in any direction and you're in a real neighborhood with real locals. The twist? It looks expensive and isn't, especially compared to Charleston, which sells nearly the same pitch at prices that tend to run noticeably higher. Detroit is next, and this one has a trap. You saw the murals on Instagram, you read the comeback narrative, you heard cheap and authentic and put it on the list. Here's what you missed. Detroit's revival is extremely neighborhood-specific. Midtown, Corktown, and the Eastern Market area are genuinely thriving. Great restaurants, good energy, real culture. But Detroit is a large, car-dependent city, and if you book the wrong Airbnb because it was $20 cheaper, you are having a completely different and significantly worse trip. Eastern Market on a weekend is one of the best urban market experiences in the country. Produce, food stalls, vendors, actual community. And here's an underused move. The Detroit-Windsor border crossing puts you in Canada in about 10 minutes, which most visitors never bother to use. The twist, it's not cheap everywhere. It's selectively cheap, and the good stuff is clustered. Do 30 minutes of research before you book anything. Stieg, Asbury Park, Jersey Shore means boardwalk, reality TV, summer crowds, skip. That's the whole mental model. What actually happened? Asbury Park spent decades in decline, and the community that revived it was largely driven by an LGBTQ+ community and an independent music scene, neither of which were trying to create a tourist destination. The Stone Pony is a legitimate music landmark with a history that goes back decades. The beach is accessible and nowhere near Hampton's pricing. NYC is roughly 90 minutes by train, making this a real weekend trip with no flights, no airport, no checked bag. Everything is walkable. Nothing is a chain. The revival is bottom-up, which is the only kind that actually holds. Here's the pattern across all 8. The best under-visited U.S. cities have one thing in common. Something the famous ones lost, a reason to exist beyond tourism, a resettlement policy, a zoning law, a geography quirk, a community that built something real before anyone was watching. That's the system. That's what the algorithm doesn't show you. If one of these is your next trip, drop it in the comments. Also, genuinely curious which one surprised you most. It's the Ohio one, isn't it? It's always the Ohio one.